Pubs, is Vixie. I hope you're having a great day, and I hope it only gets better. Welcome back to the Fallout New Vegas miniseries, where I rate all of the uniques in the game. If you missed the previous 2 episodes, where I rate first the melee weapons and unarmed weapons, and then all of the guns, you can go ahead and click these cards right here. Or you can go down to the links in the description and you can watch those first. Though it doesn't matter because this isn't like the chronology of these videos isn't important. Before we get into this, of course, there's just a few things I want to get into. I'm not going to have as many disclaimers because, you know, this is the 3rd video. But I will say, I was thinking about once all of these videos are up, I was going to do a double upload next week where I upload the next episode in my Hollow Knight series, as well as uploading a consolidated compilation version of this series that is just what the original length of the video would be. I'm not sure if I will do that that compilation thing or if I'll just end up putting it in a playlist, but I guess we will see what happens. Make sure to leave a comment if you would like to have that one long video to watch for whatever purposes you may wish. Being that this video is going to be on the energy and explosive weapons, but most importantly, the energy weapons, the Project Nevada mod, which I'm not sure if it's the one that did this, but I'm pretty sure it is, it hit the energy weapons particularly hard because it added a bunch of new mechanics to them that I didn't ask for. So the B-roll is going to look very different to a vanilla load order. Aside from that, we have quite a few guns to go through, seeing as how we have to go through all of the energy weapons and all of the explosive weapons, which I believe would probably come out to around the same length of the guns. But before we get into the energy and explosive weapons, of course, we have to talk about the comment of the week. There was no theme this week, so I just picked out a comment that I particularly enjoyed from the last video. I picked out this comment from Bodhi the Spoodergen, where they humbly say they had been waiting for the 2nd episode of this specific series, and they were very happy to see Breakcore Skeleton come back. If you would like to show up as the comment of the week, potentially, leave a comment down below, and I might pick it out. It could be funny, it could be interesting, it could be just a totally random anecdote, and so long as I think it's pretty cool, you may be the next comment of the week. And I haven't really specified this part yet, but you don't have to comment on any specific video. I don't necessarily take a comment from the last video that was uploaded or anything like that. I just look through my comments and I see which one that I particularly liked. So I might pick out a comment from 4 videos ago or something like that, and you could show up as next comment of the week even if you didn't mean to. In general, I appreciate your interaction, and I appreciate people, much like Bodhi the Spoodergen here, that just are expressing their enjoyment of particular parts of my videos or series that I may be doing. And with that, let us move on to the bulk of the video. Starting off with the AER14 Prototype. This unique laser rifle is found on the 5th floor of Vault 22 through a locked stairway door to the common area, lying on the ground next to a scorched skeleton. On top of the usual increased damage, the AER14 Prototype also has a tighter spread and a little bit better crit stats, with a crit damage of 35 and a crit chance multiplier of 2 instead of 1.5. Also notably, this laser gun uses 2 microfusion cells per shot instead of 1 like the normal rifle. On top of that, the AER14 Prototype also has a unique look to it, which most uniques in New Vegas do, but this one is amongst the few that have a considerably unique appearance instead of being like a different color or having a drawing on the side of the stock or something. Now that I have been doing a energy weapons character, I can say that the performance of energy weapons in New Vegas varies quite a lot, and the AER14 Prototype is actually one that it's pretty solid. It's pretty damn good. According to the wiki here, apparently it is also possible to reach a 95% crit chance with it. So you have a 5% chance to not crit, which is very, very good. And in my limited testing with this thing specifically, I was impressed, even if its performance and mechanics were skewed by Project Nevada a bit, but we've been over about how much I dislike that mod. On a whole, this is a very fine start, and I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Moving on to the Alien Blaster, a truly unique weapon. You find this at a mercenary camp just north of the Horowitz farmstead. However, you need to have the Wild Wasteland trait for it to show up. If you do not have the Wild Wasteland trait, you will instead get the spawn of a different unique that is actually way better, and we will get to going forward. But for the time being, we are looking at the Alien Blaster. Before Fallout 4 and Fallout 76, the Alien Blaster was meant to be this sort of super secretive, like, super weapon that you only ever get one of with incredibly limited ammo. They honorable mention to the Fallout 3 Mothership Zeta DLC, which made this slightly less special because it gave you the ability to find more and gave you a unique alien blaster in the form of the Captain's Sidearm, I believe, instead of having to pray for like one in a trillion chance to get the fire lance to spawn and you actually find it. But in New Vegas, the alien blaster is what it was always meant to be, which is that truly unique one-of-one super weapon. The most notable thing about this, despite it being, alien technology that you can actually get your hands on, is its stats, with the fact that it does fairly solid damage at 75 per shot, but it has a 100% crit chance. Every shot you fire from the alien blaster is guaranteed to crit. So it takes that 75 damage and makes it 125 damage instead. As to be expected, this thing is absolutely bonkers because it's supposed to be. You only get one, the ammo source is incredibly limited, you cannot buy any of it from any vendor, and you can only really get it from like Scrounger procs, and that's pretty much it. So purely for the spectacle of this weapon being, as I mentioned, a one-of-one super weapon and an incredibly limited resource, I'm gonna give this thing a 9 out of 10. Next up, we return to Gunrunner's arsenal for Cleansing Flame, a unique flamer. Cleansing Flame is not purchased from the Gunrunner's Vendortron, but is instead purchased from Gloria Van Graff at the Silver Rush. So if you want a unique flamer that is pretty damn solid, maybe take a little bit extra time to wipe out the Van Graffs like they deserve to be. Being that this is a flamer and works fundamentally different than every other weapon in the game, it doesn't really have the same increased crit and increased VATS accuracy and stuff like that, because flamers don't really benefit from those all too much, especially seeing how Cleansing Flame's crit damage is actually 1. Cleansing Flame's benefit comes in its vastly increased damage and increased range, and the fact that the DOT effect of the burn itself scales in damage even more the more you level up your energy weapon skill. I mentioned in the last episode that I am much more partial to flamers when it comes to using heavy weapons, even though this is technically an energy weapon, so Cleansing Flame is very, very solid. The biggest downside to Cleansing Flame and all flamers in this game is the fact that even on my superior hardware that Fallout New Vegas couldn't have even processed to exist at the time of its release, this thing destroys your frame rate. Your frame rate goes away. If there's a lot of enemies and you just tape down the trigger on your flamer, you are going to murder your FPS. It's a bit rough, but that is offset by the fact that flamethrowers are really, really cool. In general, this is a flamethrower, and you can't really mess up a flamethrower. And if you do mess up a flamethrower, it usually ends up in your fuel tank exploding and turning you into mulch. So we're gonna give this thing a 9 out of 10. Stepping back into Zion with the Honest Hearts DLC, we have the Compliance Regulator, a unique weapon that functions fairly similarly to the laser pistol, but is technically a true unique. The absolute most unique thing about it is the fact that this thing as a weapon is pretty much total dog shit and completely useless, but that's because it is an incredibly effective taser. That is its entire point. It is a taser. It is a less lethal weapon. Much like the dart gun from Fallout 3, this thing's main deal is you having it on hotkey, pulling it out, stunning someone, paralyzing them for like 10 straight seconds, and switching to an actual gun so you can deal with them while they are completely unable to fight back. While this gun is quite literally useless when it comes to killing things on its own, it is incredibly funny to just have in the back pocket in case you need to deal with a Deathclaw real quick, and you just go pew, and then suddenly they stop moving, and then you can switch to your All-American or something and just put a couple rounds in its face. It's incredibly funny. Even more funny when you get a relatively, we'll say, round enemy, kind of like a mole rat, and you get them at the top of a hill, and then you paralyze them and you just watch them roll down the hill. That's incredibly fun. Totally useless weapon, but an incredible tool to have. And also really funny given circumstances. But seeing as how this is going largely based on the weapon's performance and not its utility, we're only gonna give this thing like a 5.5. Next up, stepping over to the Old World Blues DLC, we have Elijah's jury-rigged Tesla cannon. The most notable thing about this specific instance of the Tesla cannon is that it holds more ammo, allowing you to fire 6 times before reloading, and it's generally more durable than the other unique Tesla cannon we'll get to later. But for the time being, I will mention that compared to that other unique Tesla cannon and the base Tesla cannon, Elijah's Tesla cannon falls somewhere in between the two as far as damage goes. I have never really bothered getting this weapon at any point, to the point that I have completely forgotten to even mention where you get this thing, so I guess we'll go back and do that real quick. Apparently, you get this thing in the Big MT, go figure, west of the wooden platform where the second sentry gun is located at Elijah's watch. I can't even remember where that is, but that's what the wiki says. It's good that it's more durable, and it's good that it can fire a couple more times before loading compared to the other Tesla cannons, but I don't really care. Compared to the other gun that is referencing a character that shows up in Dead Money, being Christine's Circle of Steel silencer rifle, which we talked about last episode, yeah, this one feels much more like it's related to Dead Money than the silencer rifle does, which is to say, I don't care, and I never bothered grabbing it. This is a general, we'll say, word of warning, word of caution. If you are doing a heavy energy weapons character and you want a heavy energy weapons very soon, don't bother going to the Big MT and trying to get this gun early, because the other unique Tesla cannon is immediately easier to get than this one is, because it's just kind of sitting on the ground somewhere. You will have to get through some stuff to get to it, but it is just sitting on the ground where you could theoretically pop a stealth point and grab it. But we'll come back to that in a minute. For the time being, for the fact that this gun does not really serve a point, seeing as how there is a better version of it in the base game you do not need the DLCs for, and you do not need to enter a DLC area for, we're gonna give it like a 2, because there's not really a reason for this gun to exist. Lore, I guess? But Christine's silencer rifle managed to throw in lore on top of a really good sniper rifle that does operate as an alternative to the Gobi campaign scout rifle instead of just an inferior option. Good. Next up, base game weapon again. We have Euclid's Sea Finder, a true unique weapon that some people also just call Archimedes. You get this gun from a kid in Freeside who is literally just walking around and pretending to shoot people with it, but there's a catch. If you just buy it off the kid in Freeside or take it off of him, what have you, I won't judge, you will literally just have a toy blaster that doesn't actually do anything. You can hold it up, you can aim it, and it doesn't do nothing. But if you complete the quest That Lucky Old Sun and put Helios 1 back online, while choosing to arm Archimedes 2 instead of sending power to the Strip or McCarran or what have you, you will then power the Archimedes 2 orbital strike system, meaning once a day, you can use Euclid Sea Finder to call in an orbital strike from a laser platform in orbit. When I was recording B-roll for the weapons, I had forgotten that I would need to complete that quest on this character that I made just to cheat all the weapons in and be proficient with all the weapons, so I don't actually have B-roll of it, but I'm sure Snowy will find some footage of it that other people have uploaded, and that they'll get proper credit. Isn't that right, Snowy? You're right, I'm sorry. Anyway, this thing is incredibly neat. It's also the most unique weapon just in the game, period. It has a big downside in the fact that you can't use it indoors because you're painting an area for an orbital strike. The platform has to be able to see it, and you can only use it once a day. But there are mods to get around both of those. In general, just for the spectacle of this weapon and the reward for actually keeping it around, if you happen to get it before doing That Lucky Old Sun, it's pretty cool. I would give this thing a solid 8.5 out of 10. Moving on to the Dead Money DLC, we have the Holorifle, a truly unique weapon that functions very similar to the grenade launcher. Not the grenade rifle, those are different. The way you get this weapon is theoretically easy, however, there is a huge caveat to it. The Holorifle is given to you at the very beginning of the Dead Money DLC once you actually show up at the Sierra Madre's grounds. However, you have to get through the entirety of Dead Money to use it outside of Dead Money, and that is a big downside because Dead Money is the worst DLC in the entire game. I cannot overstate how much I hate this DLC. Having to go through the entirety of a DLC to use one specific weapon outside of said DLC is a huge downside. However, that being said, I never really bothered using the Holorifle outside of the DLC because I had assumed it was specifically a tool to destroy the radios that can set off your bomb collar. That is not so. In my testing that you have most likely seen in the B-roll, the Holorifle is shockingly good. See, I had assumed it was literally just essentially a pulse gun that is hard-coded to specifically destroy radios and isn't meant to be used as an actual weapon. However, now that I have the stats actually in front of me and I have used it on Deathclaws, I can say, wow. Really? It has a damage per shot of 80, which is surprising for the fact that I just thought it was a pulse gun. That is very surprising. Not to mention that this thing is essentially an energy shotgun and shoots effectively a cone. Well, not a cone, but just a very wide projectile that can hit multiple enemies, and I'm pretty sure it even overpenetrates enemies. So seeing as how it's between 1 and 9 in my brain for absurdly good weapon and worst DLC in the game, we're gonna give this thing a 4.5 out of 10. Up next, we have another Gunrunner's Arsenal DLC weapon with the Microfusion Hyberbreeder Alpha. This is a unique recharger pistol that you buy from Cliff Briscoe at the Dinobite gift shop, and of course, if he is dead for whatever reason, you can just buy it off the Vendortron at the Gunrunners. Seeing as how this gun is quite the mouthful, we'll call it the MFA for short. The MFA is unique in the fact that it is, you know, a recharger pistol, and those weapons in themselves are unique in the fact that they never need to reload. They have, theoretically, infinite ammo. However, you just have to wait for your ammo to come back. And unfortunately, you can't just equip the weapon, have it charge itself, and then de-equip it, because it will delete all of the ammo that came with it, stupidly. And when you add the fact that this gun's damage is not stellar, with a crit multiplier that is not great, because I think this is fully automatic, I can't remember. The MFA is not great, but I did remember significantly just destroying Deathclaws in the B-roll, so I'm guessing this has something weird about it. Stepping away from the damage specifically of this real quick, the biggest selling point of the MFA is the fact that it recharges ammo way faster than the recharger pistol and the rifle, which that's the biggest downside of the weapons. I don't know where to rank this, so just to be fair, we're going to give it a 5 out of 10. This one will be easy. Next up, we have the Missing Laser Pistol, a unique quote-unquote laser pistol. This is a laser pistol. That's it. This thing is completely stock standard. It is identical to a normal laser pistol because the only thing unique about it is someone lost it, and it is purely a quest item that you go grab for the quest pistol packin', and you turn it in. But if you are collecting all of the uniques, this is technically a unique, so I guess you could start that quest and then just keep it on your person because it's a quest item and you can't put it away. I will note though that the AEP7 pistol, that is the laser pistol from New Vegas and 3, is like my favorite gun in Fallout. So purely for that, we're gonna give this a 6 instead of a 1 for the fact that it's a unique that doesn't do anything. So purely because I like the AEP7, this thing's a 6 out of 10. Remaining in the realm of the AEP7 laser pistol, we have Pew Pew, a unique laser pistol. This weapon is effectively your final reward for completing the Sunset Sarsaparilla challenge and collecting all 50 Sunset Sarsaparilla star bottle caps. You find it next to the body of Alan Marks at the Sunset Sarsaparilla headquarters after presenting the 50 caps to Festus during the A Valuable Lesson quest. Unlike the previous laser pistol being basically no different, Pew Pew is significantly better than the standard laser pistol, with the biggest downside being you only shoot it twice and then you have to reload. And that is because it's called Pew Pew. You shoot twice and then you have to reload. You go pew pew and then you reload. Do you get it? But to make up for that insanely low ammo capacity, this thing's damage is way higher than the standard laser pistol. On top of that, it also has a vastly increased crit multiplier and has a crit damage of 50, bringing it up to a total damage on a crit of 125. So when it comes to unique laser pistols, Pew Pew is easily the best option, especially seeing as how your other option is literally the same thing as the default one. Some may be disappointed that their final reward for the tedious task of collecting 50 star bottle caps is a unique laser pistol, but as someone who loves the AEP7 and is a particular fan of Pew Pew, this thing's gonna be a 10 out of 10. This thing's my favorite. I love it so much. Next up, we have a gun I mentioned earlier, the Pulse Gun, a truly unique weapon. You get this weapon in a locked chest inside the Vault 34 Armory, making that 2 unique weapons you can find in the Vault 34 Armory. But, you know, you have to get into the armory first, and when you do, you either need a lockpick skill of 100 to open the chest it's in, or to get Colonel Blackwell's key found in a filing cabinet in Pearl's Barracks at Nellis Air Force Base. So much like everything else to do with Vault 34, it's kind of a pain in the ass to get this thing. And your reward is a weapon that will not do anything against most enemies in the game, but that is because this gun is the single best weapon to use against robots or power armor in the game, aside from, like, you know, the enhancing material rifle explosive rounds. But for dedicated weapons that shoot robots and power armor real good, the pulse gun is a super good option. And that is because, go figure from the name, this thing fires an electromagnetic pulse that completely fries electronics. Its damage is absolutely ass crap, and its crit damage is equally absolutely ass crap, but that is because you do 250 extra points of damage against robots and 110 extra points of damage against power armor per shot. So instead of being 5, if you shoot a sentry bot or something, you instead do 255 damage. If you shoot a Brotherhood of Steel Paladin, you do 115 damage. And for the fact that you can shoot this thing 5 times before you have to reload, you have a theoretical damage output, ignoring crits and the like that, against, say, a sentry bot, 1,275 damage. So if there is a robot you just really hate in particular, yeah, the pulse gun is a great way to deliver express prejudice directly to their chassis. If you're not fighting robots, this thing is basically useless. But if you are fighting robots, this thing is dummy good. So purely because of that insane duality, I'm gonna give it a 6.25 out of 10. Before we move on to the rest of the energy and explosive weapons, I would like to very quickly give a shout out to all of my current patrons. You are so very much appreciated, and I love you very much. If you would like to support me and the channel, you can do so on Patreon for just $5 a month, and you'll get a bunch of cool perks, such as work in progress art, whether it be for thumbnails or just something after working on, early access to videos, full resolution art, and access to a very special channel where I post all of my uncut and director's cut content for your viewing pleasure. That way you can see all the stuff that doesn't make it into the final upload. Aside from that, eventually when I have enough patrons to support this sort of idea, I will start taking suggestions from my patrons for games to play on the channel. So if any of that strikes your fancy, make sure to head down the link in the description and check out my Patreon. Once again, a huge shout out to all of my current patrons. And before we actually end the Patreon read, I'm just going to talk a little bit longer so it has time to crossfade and I can have the little animation of telling you what song's currently playing pop up. And now that that's out of the way, we can move on to the Q35 Matter Modulator, a unique plasma rifle. You find this weapon in the Repcon headquarters behind a very hard locked door, meaning you either need to have a lockpick skill of 100 to open it, or gain access with a level 3 Repcon HQ keycard. Alternatively, there is also a locked terminal that is also very hard locked, so you need a science skill of 100 to get it. But if you meet any of those requirements and can step in and grab this thing, your reward is a very solid plasma rifle. As to be expected, this thing is a very solid version of the plasma rifle, with the most notable thing about it being its absolutely stellar crit stats. It is a crit chance multiplier of 2 times, and its crit damage is sitting at 62 as opposed to the base damage of 40. So you get an extra 22 damage on top of the standard bonus damage you would get from a crit. In general, I'm just a big fan of plasma weapons in New Vegas and 76 specifically. I'm not the biggest fan of plasma weapons in Fallout 3 or 4. Fallout 3, your options for plasma weapons were very limited, and Fallout 4, I just felt they were kind of not really notable, especially compared to the laser weapons you could get. But New Vegas has a plethora of plasma weapons to choose from, including the plasma caster, and in 76, for me in particular, you have the option of the Enclave plasma, which I am absolutely elated about because I love the Enclave. Very weird opinion, I know, but they've always been my favorite faction. Probably the best plasma rifle in the game. I don't think there's any other better options. So I'm going to say this thing is an 8 out of 10. Returning once more to the Gunrunner's Arsenal DLC, we have the Sprtel-Wood 9700. Sure. This is a unique Gatling laser, and you can buy it from Gloria Van Graff in the Silver Rush in Freeside again. This one in particular, I remember in my testing was hit particularly hard by the Project Nevada mod, or whatever mod ends up changing it, I don't know for sure, where instead of firing its usual green lasers, it fired very sparkly purple lasers that made it almost impossible to see. But ignoring whatever mods I may have being stupid, I have used this thing in the past, and it is absolutely stellar. As I mentioned in the last episode, the highest DPS weapon in the game is actually the CZ57 Avenger, the unique minigun, so this thing is not quite as DPS hungry as that, but that's not to say its DPS is not absolutely bonkers. And when it comes to 3 in New Vegas at least, I have always preferred the Gatling laser over the minigun, and the Sprtel-Wood 9700 is no different. On a whole, ignoring the goofiness that my mods did to this thing and made it practically unusable due to the fact that I can't fucking see when I shoot it, this thing's super good. We're gonna give it a 7 out of 10. Next up, we finally come full circle and we reach the other unique Tesla cannon, the Tesla-Beaton Prototype. This weapon is found at a crashed vertibird surrounded and guarded by several Mr. Gutsies and sentry bots, and that is the big downside for getting this thing early. But if you can get a stealth boy, you at your level 3, level 4 character at the time you can get down here can just kind of sneak past and grab it off of the floor, because it's not being carried by one of the robots, it's not in a very hard locked chest, it is sitting on the ground next to a dead skeleton, as opposed to breakcore skeleton. Another big downside is with the fact that this thing was being carried in a vertibird that crashed, it is in very, very poor condition when you find it. And it is going to contract a premium if you want to fix it, because you're not exactly going to get another Tesla cannon very soon. You're not going to be getting the jury rigging perk anytime soon, which means your best option is talking to Major Knight at the Mojavé outpost and having him repair it because he has a repair skill of 100, and that is not cheap for a weapon like this. But ignoring the annoyance of having to sneak past the robots to get it early, and the further annoyance of it being practically broken when you find it, this is the best Tesla cannon in the game. This thing absolutely slaps. So with the fact that it is an insanely good weapon with 2 very glaring downsides, I'm gonna say this thing is a 6.7 out of 10. Not quite a 7, but higher than a 6. Once again, returning to the Gunrunner's Arsenal DLC, we have the Smitty Special, a unique plasma caster. Much like most of the other GRA energy weapons, you buy this from Gloria Van Graff. Compared to the standard plasma caster, this thing actually does less damage, but that is to make up for the fact that it is much more durable and fires much faster than the standard plasma caster. So this is a case where the benefit of using the unique over the standard one is not damage, but sustained DPS. I did not really care for this one. For me in particular, I would say I would prefer to use a modified standard plasma caster instead of using a unique plasma caster. I didn't really find this one to be very, all that stellar, and I consistently forget that it is a weapon I can get. Usually when I go to the Van Graffs trying to get a heavy energy weapon, I am usually picking up the Sprtel-Wood, not the Smitty Special. So I'm gonna give this a 4 out of 10. Next up, we have very not notable weapons. As opposed to the missing laser pistol, this barely unique laser rifle is actually downright inferior to the standard laser rifle in every way. The same can be said for the Van Graff plasma rifle. Both of these weapons are just directly inferior to their standard counterparts, and if that does not show you the quality of the Van Graff's builds, I don't know what will. And they are basically just here to be used as quest items for the Birds of a Feather quest. They are completely unnotable, they are completely pointless, they are purely here to be a quest item, and there's no real point in keeping them aside from you're trying to collect every technical unique in the game. So this is the first that we'll probably ever do this. Maybe we'll do this again later, but for the time being, this is a collective 1 out of 10, because these both are not technically unique weapons, but technically are, because they're named, that serve no purpose. Finishing off the energy weapons, we have the non-Wild Wasteland version of the weapon you get up north by that mercenary camp, the YCS-186, a unique Gauss rifle. As I literally just mentioned, this replaces the Alien Blaster up by that mercenary camp north of the Horowitz farmstead if you do not have the Wild Wasteland perk. However, you're not missing out on much, because while the Alien Blaster is the one-of-one special amazing energy weapon, the YCS-186 is one of, if not the best weapon in the game. This thing is fucking bonkers. And that is with the fact that you can actually get ammo for it because it just takes microfusion cells. And that is on top of the fact that you can theoretically repair it yourself once you talk to the Brotherhood of Steel and can get access to Gauss rifles. So this thing has quite a few things on the Alien Blaster. It doesn't have a guaranteed crit every shot, but it does have an increased crit multiplier of 2 with a fairly respectable crit damage of 70, which is half of its base damage, but I mean, if this thing did twice as much damage every time it crit, there would be no reason to use anything else, which it's already a hard fight. You can find countless people online talking about how amazing this weapon is and how the Wild Wasteland perk is not necessarily the best idea, if you want the best energy weapon in the game. So it cannot be understated how effective this thing can be. It's basically just a Gauss rifle, which is already good, turned up to 11 and the knob has been ripped off. And with the fact that it is probably the best energy weapon in the game, but it's not my favorite because I like Pew Pew more, we're going to give this thing a 9.5 out of 10. And finally, we have a few unique explosive weapons to look at. Starting off with, you guessed it, the Gunrunner's Arsenal DLC with Esther, the unique Fat Man. Compared to the standard Fat Man, aside from this thing's incredibly unique appearance with the blast shield up front, it is more durable, never jams at low durability, costs less action points to use in VATS, and does more direct impact damage, on top of being able to use the Gunrunner's Arsenal ammo types that were added to the mini nukes. Which, granted, there is a Gunrunner's Arsenal version of the Fat Man you can buy, but if you're going to be buying a Fat Man that is capable of using those ammo types, why not just buy the unique? It's infinitely better. Also way more expensive, but we're pushing that aside for a moment. The most notable thing about this thing, because, you know, it is largely just a unique Fat Man, so it's gonna do a lot of damage, I don't need to specify that, is that when you equip it, it actually gives you a temporary bonus to your damage threshold, adding an extra 10 points on top of whatever you may have, as well as 25 points of radiation resistance. Meaning, you take slightly less damage and have a slightly increased chance of surviving if you happen to shoot this thing a little bit too close to yourself. Hey, that blast shield on the front is actually doing something. Cool. Yeah, it's silly. It's a unique Fat Man, so it's just a Fat Man turned up to 10. So yeah, this thing slaps. It's really funny. Limited and very expensive ammo, yes, but we're not going to be maining a Fat Man. The Fat Man has always been a weapon that you pull up every once in a while just to absolutely vaporize something in particular, and it's always funny. We're going to give this thing an 8 out of 10. Yes, next up we are going to the Lonesome Road DLC to look at both the Great Bear grenade rifle and the Red Victory grenade rifle. Go figure, they're both unique grenade rifles. The reason I lump them together is they are largely same-ish. The most notable thing about them is that the Great Bear grenade rifle does more direct impact damage at 12 as opposed to the 2 of the Red Victory grenade rifle. However, the most notable thing about them is basically just that you can get one or the other depending on your choice at the end of Lonesome Road. If you choose to launch the missiles at the NCR and go to the Long 15, you will find the Great Bear grenade rifle inside a gun case near Colonel Royaz, and if you decide to shoot the missiles at the Legion, once you go to Dry Wells, you will find the Red Victory grenade rifle in a gun case, on a cliff in the western side of the area. That being said, you always have the option to fire missiles at both the NCR and the Legion, and can theoretically get both, though for collection purposes, I don't know why you would even bother. In my testing, both of these weapons were incredibly unremarkable. That is another big reason that I'm lumping them together despite them feeling very samey. Despite the fact that they are both unique grenade rifles, they also function very similar. You don't really notice the direct impact damage because you're largely not going to be direct impacting people with it. So you're just going to get the same 100 explosive damage, and just, I didn't enjoy using these, which is weird because I love grenade launchers, as we will see with the next weapon. But the Great Bear and Red Victory rifles, I don't really see the point of, aside from cool lore thing. So I'm going to give them both a 2 out of 10. We're going to be remaining in the location of unique grenade rifles for a bit, starting with the Mercenaries grenade rifle from the Courier Stash add-on, which is, of course, given to you immediately upon starting the game. As could be expected from a grenade rifle you get at literally the beginning of the game, this thing is actually not that much better from any other grenade rifle in the game, and it requires an explosive skill of 0 to use because it's a starter weapon. That being said, of course, this is still a grenade launcher you get at the very beginning of the game, so for the early game, this thing is incredibly helpful and incredibly good, but it falls off basically immediately. And if you're doing an explosive character, which I was not too long ago, I particularly found myself stopping using the grenade rifle and started just throwing the never-ending stockpile of dynamite I had collected. So in general, this thing definitely served its purpose until you can get your explosive skill up high enough that your dynamite actually starts doing significant damage, and then eventually you'll just have a stockpile of tons upon tons of different explosives anyway, and eventually you'll just end up getting a different grenade launcher. So go figure, this is a starter weapon. Even if it is a grenade launcher, it only really does what it needs to for as long as it needs to, and then it stops being useful whatsoever. 5 out of 10. I don't really have an opinion on it. And for the last unique grenade rifle, thank God, we have Thump-Thump. This one is my personal favorite. You get Thump-Thump in the Nellis Array during the Ant Misbehavin' quest, where it is sitting next to 2 broken generators inside the hangar area place. It's the place you go into to kill the ants. Seeing as how this is not a reward for that quest, you can miss it if you do not, actually look around and find it. Also, be very careful about using explosives in this area because there's a lot of high explosive ordnance sitting around, and not only can that very likely kill you, if you survive, it will probably also toss Thump-Thump somewhere you can potentially not get it. So maybe use melee weapons in there. But your reward is the best grenade rifle in the game, so I would say it's worth it. It shares the same extremely low direct impact damage of 2 as the Red Victory grenade rifle and the Mercenaries grenade rifle, but while it starts out with a explosive damage of 100, it actually scales that explosive damage the best compared to all of the other grenade rifles. So at an explosive scale of 100, your damage will go from 100 on an explosion to 204, as opposed to the 179 of the other grenade rifles. So purely from that effect alone, unless you want like 15 extra direct impact damage on the Great Bear rifle, Thump-Thump is unequivocally the best grenade rifle in the game, which is great because it has a lot of character. I'm a big fan of Thump-Thump. Even if I'm not doing an explosive character, I always have it on my person just in case. And with the fact that it's a grenade rifle and not a grenade launcher or any other big explosive weapon, it actually has a very, very low skill requirement. You only need an explosive skill of 25 to use it, and you only need strength of 3. So this thing, very solid, very low requirements that I guarantee you will have by the time you're up at Nellis. We're gonna give this thing a 9 out of 10. I'm a big fan. Thankfully, stepping away from the unique grenade rifles, we move to a grenade machine gun, Mercy. Mercy is a unique grenade machine gun, which is absolutely absurd. It holds less ammo than the standard grenade machine gun, but that is because it is shooting 40mm grenades instead of 25mm grenades, which, while they are more rare and more expensive than 25mm grenades, they do much more damage. This thing, if you have the ammo to supply it, is absurd because you effectively have 18 grenade rifles that you can just shoot one after the other in this one gun that you have to reload for like 3 seconds, maybe. An interesting thing about this that doesn't seem correct, but I'm just going to relay what the wiki says. It has a drastically increased crit chance multiplier of 13.44, but it has a crit damage of 0. So I guess it's a high crit chance, but you don't do any extra damage on a crit, so I don't know what the deal with that is. That's not too important because this thing doesn't really need to crit to do big damage. Remember, at an explosive skill of 100, which you need to use this thing effectively, your explosions are doing 179 damage per shot. And this is a machine gun that holds 18 40mm grenades in it every time you reload. So you can fire fully automatic 18 179 damage shots. Then you have to reload for 3 seconds before you can do it again. Sustained DPS is Mercy's middle name, and you may have noticed that I neglected to mention where you get this thing. Maybe it was because I forgot it, but not this time. And that is because that is the biggest caveat that Mercy has. It's not locked behind an insanely hard difficulty DLC, it's not locked behind an insanely tedious DLC, and it's not insanely expensive that you have to buy for like 50,000 casts from the gunrunners. It is a base game weapon, in fact. You find it next to a dead paladin of the Mojavé Brotherhood of Steel in Deadwind Cavern. And if any of you know what Deadwind Cavern is, you know why that is a big issue. If you don't know what it is, I will tell you. Deadwind Cavern is a Deathclaw den. There is a lot of Deathclaws down there, and Deathclaws do not play. The reason there is a unique grenade machine gun that you can get is that it is locked behind one of the most difficult areas in the game. Not only are there level Deathclaws you can find down there, there is also a Deathclaw mother that you need to kill, and most notably, the legendary Deathclaw, a unique named Deathclaw that is one of the hardest enemies in the entirety of the base game. But if you can clear out Deadwind Cavern, if you can deal with all the Deathclaws, if you can dump all of the ammo you have into the legendary Deathclaw and take it down, your reward is a unique 40mm grenade machine gun, which I would say is almost worth it. I love grenade launchers. My god, it is a pain in the ass to get. We're gonna give this thing an 8 out of 10. Bringing it down a bit, we have a unique missile launcher in the form of Annabelle. Annabelle is found at Black Mountain, being wielded by a Nightkin sniper, quote unquote, and all you have to do is head up there, take out the sniper, and loot it off of his corpse. Being a unique missile launcher, you can probably guess that this thing is pretty tits. It comes with a guidance system pre-installed that improves its accuracy, and it uses less AP and bats. It's also lighter and requires less strength to use, and largely, it has no downsides compared to the standard missile launcher, especially seeing as how you can theoretically get it fairly early, maybe not directly after starting the game, but definitely soon after. This is a very solid choice for an explosives character. You could go quite a long time in the early game and never find a missile launcher, but you could make a pit stop at Black Mountain, take out a single Nightkin sniper, and take off with a unique missile launcher, which I would say is pretty damn good. On a whole, I always found this thing very interesting, very fun to use, and not a whole lot bad to say about it. 7 out of 10. And finally, to close off this mini-series, we have the final unique explosive weapon and the final unique weapon in the game, the Holy Frag Grenade, a unique frag grenade. These weapons, an instance of 3, are found in the basement of a church in the eastern part of Camp Searchlight. However, if you do not have the Wild Wasteland trait, these weapons will not spawn, and you will never be able to experience them. The Holy Frag Grenades, based off of the Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch from Monty Python, are the best thrown weapons in the game because you can only ever get 3. They do an absolutely absurd amount of damage on explosion, a solid 800, maxing out at 1,632 damage, which is absolutely bonkers compared to all the other thrown explosives in the game, on top of the giant theatric nuclear explosion that they make every time they go off, as opposed to the standard kaboom that frag grenades do. Monty Python is very funny, these things are very funny, they are insanely strong, and oh my god, I wish I could get more of them. The fact that they are so limited makes them extra special. Though, if you do want to get more in a not spawning them through the console commands way, I would recommend getting the More Perks mod for Fallout New Vegas, which just adds a ton of different varied perks for a ton of different builds that might be a little neglected in the base game's perks pool. Because one of the perks from that mod gives you a chance to randomly spawn one of any thrown explosive weapon in the game whenever you look at a corpse, and that includes Holy Frag Grenades, thus adding the only way to renewably get Holy Frag Grenades in the game. However, it is a mod, and that is not intended by the developers, but I mean, if you want to use them, that's the best option. Purely because of the spectacle of these weapons and how insanely strong they are, I'm going to give the Holy Frag Grenades a 10 out of 10. And with that, our Fallout New Vegas mini-series comes to a close, and I will have decided whether or not to put this into a consolidated compilation or just put it into a playlist. I don't know. I'll probably end up doing the playlist, but if people want to see that longer video, then I suppose I can do that and just do a double upload next week. But for the time being, I've been talking for too long and my voice is dying. You might be able to tell, I don't know. So I am going to end this video here. If you genuinely enjoyed this video, consider dropping a like and make sure to hit that subscribe button to become a puppy if you haven't already, and hit the bell so it actually does something. If you want to support me and the channel, consider becoming a patron for just $5 a month and you'll get a bunch of cool perks. A huge shout out to all of my current patrons. I love you all so much. Your support is very much appreciated. My name is Vixie, and I will see you all in the next one.